There we go. Okay, well, I will just share my screen here and we'll take a look at the assignment for lesson 3. So it looks pretty straightforward, and I'm not surprised that we didn't have any questions today. So we're just looking at site and regional challenges. As well, we are looking at building a sector compass. So those are 2 items that everybody's going to want to include in their next lesson assignment. And this should be pretty straightforward. There's a few things you might want to take a look at under the resources for the assignment. And these a couple of how-to videos, as well as there's some sample student projects here that might be really useful. We can just take a quick peek at that. And we'll just scan along here till we get to, there we go. Yeah, so this is an example of one of the students, and this is their site and regional challenges survey. So pretty straightforward. Some of the big picture challenges for the area that you live in, and some of the natural disasters, some of the strategies for resilience. These are all really, pretty straightforward questions. Some of the problems or weaknesses, obstacles, and cost of these unresolved issues. And then, of course, you have the SWOT analysis here. And if we look at the sector compass, this can actually be a really difficult graphical part of the course for people to deal with. Let me just make sure that I'm letting everybody in on the call here. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so this can be quite tricky. Just in that there's sort of limited graphical abilities with the software that you're using here. So I would say just do your best. This is a good example. We want to have the site plan in the middle here and graphically indicate where these sectors are. And in this example, we have water and the summer and the winter sun, which is really important. And I would say in this case, that winter sun might not be quite accurate, not quite wide enough. Prevailing wind and fire, and these other items here, including wildlife, pollution, noise, that sort of thing. So it is pretty straightforward. We can take a look at another example. This is a PDF that somebody put together. And we'll just go down to that section again. It's a nice base mount. Sorry for all the scrolling here. There we go. Again, the site and regional challenges. And filling these in the best you can. That's really helpful. It really does help set the stage for your design. And then we're going to go into this sector compass here. And you can see it's the same idea. We have the base plan in the middle, and we have all these sectors that are graphically indicated around it. So like I said, this can be a little bit tricky. Do your best with it. Some people prefer to do this by hand, and others are really quite comfortable doing this on the computer. So it really is dependent on your comfort level. if we go back to that, let's see here, what was I looking for? The rubric. Yeah, so you can see if we take a look at the rubric, it does give us a good idea of what's the sort of the weight or the value that's being placed on this. Certainly the survey is important, but there's, the bulk of the marks are for the sector compass. And this is the template that all instructors use to grade. So I highly suggest checking in with the rubric every time you're putting an assignment together. And as long as you have these items indicated within your assignment, you're going to get full marks. And of course, feedback from myself. So that covers off a little bit of the upcoming assignment. And I didn't have any questions on the Google document for today. No. So is there any questions that anybody has from the floor here that we can answer for you? Or do you want to talk about how you're doing with the course, or anything any questions outside of this week, actually, is completely fine. So if not, it'll be a short Q&A. So
Jamie?
Yes, Mark.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Is it worth trying to illustrate the magnitude of maybe more important sectors on the sector map? In addition to showing where it's at within the orientation on the site, is it worth trying to illustrate, somehow how important certain sectors are?
Well, that's a really good question. That's something I hadn't considered before. Traditionally with design, if you wanted to highlight a sector that was more weighted or more valued or more importance for your design, I might consider, the line weight on that outside ring that the sector's indicating. So you could thicken that, right? It could be proportionately thicker than others. That might be a little bit tricky depending on how your sector map is set up, because often there's overlaying, some overlay. Circles are inside of circles, so to speak, or part of circles, or I guess that arc. So that's one way you could do it. Certainly in any description that you have on that sheet. So there's going to be that sector map, and then you're going to want to have some descriptions beside it. That might be a place you want to really dial into. And that could be a sector, that could be anything. That could be your site has, is very exposed during winter winds. It could be that you have a really, you're uncomfortable with a fire sector. Maybe you have a forest right at your property line that has a lot of dead fuel on the forest floor, that sort of thing. Yeah, no, that's a very good question, Mark. And yeah, I'd be interested in seeing how you do that. Yeah. So does anybody else have anything they would like to look at today? I'm quite happy to chat about anything. Again, we have another 50 minutes here, but no questions is actually a really good thing to see. But again, I'm certainly happy to chat with you about any week. You may or may not have gone ahead too many weeks to take a look at what's coming up, but entirely up to you guys.
Yeah, Amy, this is Sudhir. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, yeah, I can hear you great. Welcome, welcome to the Q&A. I'm not sure what time it is in India, but
It is 9:40 p.m. Yeah, that's okay.
well,
Yeah, I'm used to this.
thanks for joining us. How can I help you?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. So I actually had submitted the second part of last week's assignment, like the second assignment.
Yes.
So I just want to check, is that actually okay? I mean, I think, I mean, there should be, I mean, at max, I think you actually allow 2 weeks delay or something. I mean, is that actually applicable to that, or how does it work?
Yeah, I see. I saw your note, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, last week was really crazy for me. We're trying to complete an installation. So other than Monday of last week, I did not have any time to look at anybody's work other than just checking in very briefly. So after the
Sure.
call today, I'm going to have a look at that assignment for you and provide you with some feedback. But normally, I would have time, say on a Thursday or Friday, and I wouldn't be waiting a whole week to get back to you. So I do apologize for that.
Oh, no issues. I just want to check actually, like, is that fine a day delay in just in case? Because I
Oh
actually
yeah.
like work like uh, in US timings most of the time,
Hmm.
and I also actually travel a lot in India. So due
Okay.
to that, actually, I might miss a day or two. But yeah, I will submit that during that period. I mean, is that fine actually with the future assignments as well, or it has to be done by Monday?
Well, ideally, we'd like to see them at Monday at 9, but if you're a day or so late, yeah, don't worry about that at all. Again, I'm normally picking up that sort of stuff later in the week. So if
Mhm.
it was even if it was late on Monday and I didn't have a chance to see it, I would probably provide you some feedback and grade it on the Wednesday or Thursday.
Great, great.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I had to travel a whole week before
mm,
last week, and I had to submit it early, and I actually did not see the second part of the second assignment, and I submitted it early before my travel, and I came back and I actually looked at the comments on Monday, and then actually worked on it. Actually, yeah.
yeah. Well, everybody has their lives to to live, and sometimes scheduling gets in the way. It's like myself, we're not normally installing at this time of year, but we've had an incredibly busy season, and we're just trying to wrap it up, and then I can um, look at various design projects we have, plus really focused on the OSU program here. So I totally understand. So don't worry about being a little bit late. The challenges come if you're a couple of weeks or more late. And the challenge for me is whether I have time to provide feedback or not.
Mm.
In the past, um, not with this course, because the pro course, this is the first run, but with the normal or the standard PDC course, there has been the odd occasion when a student just, has been extremely busy in their life, and then they submit 2 or 3 assignments at once near the end of the course. And then, that's tough for the instructor. So
Mm.
that's just something to keep in mind. If you can
Yep.
possibly submit that week, then it should all be good.
Yep.
Provided
Definitely.
not provided everybody doesn't do that. Well, that's the caveat. So yeah. I do have a question for everybody out there. Are you finding that having 2 weeks between assignments is manageable? Is it working for everybody for the most part?
It is for me, yes. Mainly because, especially like if it is just 1 week gap, I mean, definitely I probably be submitting things late. But yeah, I think this 2 week period is giving ample time to go through the material and work on the slides.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I see Amy says it's perfect. Excellent. I know with the standard PDC, having a week between assignments, it's difficult because there's so much content to go through. And then as we move along in the course, these are fairly easy lessons to go through so far. When we get to when we get to lesson 5, which we used to call week 5, that's probably the toughest lesson that we're going to come up against, and that is the water, when we're looking at the water layer. And 1 week turnover would be, it's a little bit tricky. So that'll be probably a really important Q&A going through that. And I really enjoy this process because it does gives myself a chance to at least review the upcoming lesson and maybe point out a few things to everybody that'll help with their process. Everybody's in a different position, of course. Some people are really comfortable with computer work, and other people are going to find that's a little bit of a struggle. But again, if you are struggling, don't hesitate to do your work by hand. And you can even do a little bit of a combination. If you found that it was just too hard to indicate graphically these sectors using the computer, then please don't hesitate to take your base plan, and you could take some trace paper, or you could just draw right onto it, right? And then just scan that or take a picture of it. However, whatever works for you, really just try and focus on the assignments and the work at hand rather than getting bogged down in the technical part of it. Some of this new software can have a steep learning curve, and we want you to really focus on the permaculture design process versus trying to articulate your ideas. Although that is long term, that's a big part of the design is taking your ideas and graphically representing them. Yeah, so I'm not sure if anybody else has any thoughts on that. Mary also agrees the 2-week period is working well. So thank you, Mary. That's excellent. Yeah, well, it's great for the instructors too, because for instance, today we do the Q&A, and then I have some other OSU related work to do. So it spaces it out quite nice. Yeah, and then of course the whole Q&A thing, getting some feedback through a Zoom meeting and any other questions answered, I think is a big bonus, especially for those who are looking to utilize the knowledge they pick up in this course and start designing themselves. So, because that's a big step when you start designing for others and then navigating that. And of course, I've been designing for many, many years. And you're still learning, right? You learn every day something new, and always trying to improve what you're doing graphically or just the actual design components that you're getting better at utilizing water or your access or whatever it is you're focusing on at that moment. So does anybody have any other questions or concerns they'd like to?
I have one more question.
Oh, sure.
Sudhi here again.
Okay.
Yeah, this is probably out of the topic from this week's assignment. But in general, actually, as we are actually working on the current site in terms of like landscaping and working on pond setups and all that. So just wanted to ask, I mean, we have a piece of land like about like 4 acres is like completely degraded land. So the water which comes from the west side actually flows through a different side, like which goes through completely on the west part of it. But since it is actually, I mean, the degraded land is actually on the northeast corner, towards northeast. So I just wanted to understand, like, does this permaculture really recommends actually just follow the slopes? Or if I actually follow the slope, basically I will be using fertile land for the pond. And I think so. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like if I follow the slopes, actually, I have to use the high fertile land. Whereas if I want to actually dig a pond in a degraded land, I would actually have to work on lots of swales and turning all that water towards this high slope.
Well, you know what? Let's just take a look at your Google document and we can chat about that. Yeah, your design site definitely looks like it's been degraded. If we take a look at the Google Earth image here.
Right. If you see on the right side there,
Yeah.
right there, yeah.
I'll get my little tool here so it's a little easier to see.
Mhm.
Yeah, so when we look at water, and like I say, that's when we get to lesson 5.
Yeah.
We really want to look at the whole picture. So you're quite right. If you're looking at retaining some water and storing it within a pond or a dam, whatever you want to call it, you also have to think about what is the source of the water that's going to be going into that. And that's where it becomes a bigger, that's where you have to look at the big picture. So if you, in some locations, if you dug a pond and you had a high water table, you're automatically going to have that fill. But that's not, that doesn't appear to be the case with your property here, given how dry it is. But in lesson 5, we're going to calculate how much water hits your property on an annual basis. And we're also going to look at how much water is going to hit the property in a 24-hour rain in your record 24-hour rain event. And that's going to give us some startling numbers. They're going to be very high. And actually, if we just go to your climate survey here, we can take a look at your annual precip. So 572 mil. And let me just do a little bit of conversion here before we get too far. I'm just taking your acres and putting them into square meters. So if we do that, we have over 158,000 square meters. And then if we simply multiply that by your annual rainfall, which I believe was 572. So without any coefficient factors, which is important to add, but without that, you are getting about 90 million liters per year falling on your property. So that is a pretty amazing amount of water. And this is where having some topographic information is really helpful. And
which is something actually lacking. I had to create it actually.
Yes. And this, and I totally understand. That tends to happen with students in Asia. It can be harder to get topographic data. I'm on your base map here, and you can tell these contours are not they're not going to represent what's there really too much, just because of the way they're shaped here. You can tell they're generated out of Google Earth, so you have to take them with a grain of salt when you're using the contour map generator. But it does give you a little bit of info in that it looks like this is the high point in your property and this is the low point. So
Exactly. Yep.
that is really good info. Now, I'm totally jumping ahead, but with let's with farm design, which is if we were looking at your property and we were applying, let's say, the agrarian platform, which is going to be something new to most people. It's not permaculture design. It is an extension thereof in some ways. It's for larger land, larger farmland design. Darren Doherty is the fellow who has developed this platform, and it's very, very interesting. I've been taking that online program from him for the last year or so, and I'm signed up for another year, and it is quite outstanding in that, much like permaculture, when they look at a land base, they're going to look at it in different layers and prioritize, let's say, water over where a building would go, right? And permaculture is very similar to that. So what they do, my long-winded answer here, when they're looking at capturing water on a farm setting, they will also often integrate a couple of things. Key line design, right? So that's something that you could take a look at in your spare time. Key line design, if you Google that, there's lots of really good information out there. So that is a way of distributing water through your site. The other is with the REX program or the agrarian platform, they often will use the access layer. So access would be roads and pathways. So let's say you put a pond down in this part of your property. Maybe you have a couple of ponds. Maybe there's a pond down here and you have a pond high in your landscape. And maybe the one high in your landscape is we're able to fill it from runoff from your roadway, right? There could be a ditch running along the top of the property that you could access. Often what they'll do is that access layer, so all the roads on the property will actually be just off contour where they can, and they will feed the ponds. So they will have at least one, we'll call it a gutter, at the side of the road, and the road will have a crown on it. The water comes off the road into the gutter, and then that gutter heads towards a pond or dam. So I guess where I'm going with this is that it's really you got to look at the whole in terms of the water. So it's not just placing a pond. It's going to be, how does that interconnect with other elements on your site? And trying, in the case of the agrarians, they're always trying to pump water up to a high point so that if possible, you can have a little bit of gravity help. Like farm design is a little bit of different to, say, a homestead design, even though the permaculture approach is the same. Your goals and what you're going to try and achieve here are going to be a little bit different, right? You're trying to create a productive landscape, perhaps for a commercial purpose. So, yeah, it's probably, I would say, within the permaculture design system, it's probably my favorite layer is water. It's quite fascinating. And I think once we get closer to lesson 5 and you go through all that content, you'll see that it's quite a deep dive into that. and we could spend weeks on it. But in a nutshell, what we're hoping to do is give you the tools so that you can see the watershed that affects your project site in terms of the macro and the micro, like where is the watershed on this smaller section of land? Does your neighbor's property, is it higher? Does it drain into it? You know, that sort of thing. And then that really gives you a very good understanding of how water is going to behave in and around your site and how you can optimize the use of it. Because I'm sure with your site right here, if you had a 100 mil rain event, it would almost behave like a flash flood, right?
Yeah.
So it would run off. And the trick is to try and hold on to that as long as possible. Yeah. So again, if it's at all possible to find better topographic information, that'll help you as we go forward. But if you can't, this will certainly give you a really good start anyhow. But yeah, we're completely limited by the data you can come across. And in North America, US, Canada, it's, you know, much easier to find this information. Europe as well. But when we get into Asia, it gets a little bit trickier. So, and when I say Asia, I'm including India in that big picture. I'm not sure I really helped you with your question. But
no, I think that gave me a different perspective of thinking, like, okay, it's just not about the water which comes in. There, I mean, and there are different factors like the underground water table and right. So everything actually probably plays a role.
Yeah, and often I'm not. I don't think this is the case where your project site is in India, but in North America here, certainly where I live, if you decided you wanted to build a pond, you have, you know, and you're in an agricultural zoning, you have to jump through a whole bunch of water licensing regulations to do that. So everywhere is a little bit different, and you do want to be careful of your approach. And certainly you want your regulatory framework to reflect your design. You don't want to design something that's not buildable.
Right.
Yeah. So again, when we're looking at agricultural land, larger parcels, permaculture design is a great tool. And then there's a whole bunch of others that you can look to as well. And I don't want to muddy the waters for you, but try looking into some keyline design.
Yeah.
That might be very interesting for you, and your property might be a good well suited for that. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. All right. Oh, we can get away from that. So I'm not sure if anybody has any other questions. If you do, you can just unmute yourself. You can type it in the chat, whatever you feel works for you. And again, we can be talking about anything you like here. We've got a little bit of time, so I'm all ears, and we could even talk about you know, a project you're involved with, or if you're you know, any sort of challenges that you're coming up to that you're a little bit unsure about. And that goes for future Q&As, right? So initially we want to look at, you know, the pertinent lesson, but beyond that, if all the questions are answered for that, we can take a look at anything. Okay. Well, I think we may have addressed everybody's concerns for the day. And I'll give you a couple of seconds here. If anybody does have a question, to fire it in the chat or unmute. But otherwise, I think we will be just end the meeting today, and I can post this video and get on with a few other things that are on my agenda for today's work. But I really appreciate everybody taking time to join the call, and look forward to seeing what everybody comes up with in their lesson 3 assignment. And as you're putting it together, if you run into any trouble, don't hesitate to post a question on the help discussion board or within the lesson 3 discussion board, wherever it works for you, or you can even pop me a note using that inbox icon on the left-hand side of the screen when you're logged into the OSU platform. But yeah, so great to see everybody. And again, you have a great week. We'll look forward to seeing what you come up with next week. Okay. Thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now, and have a great week.